What's up, everybody? It's Friday night. You know what that means. The bar is open. We got some alcohol, namely rum, at least for me. All right, I am excited. We're going to talk about a cool topic that I like getting into. I got to mute our guest's microphone because I should have done that. Anyway, so tonight we got a special guest. He's going to come on in a minute. I'm going to first go over the rules, because we have to, because, you know, people like breaking the rules. So we're going to go over them. Pop, there they are. So rule number 1 is you are welcome to ask any kind of paranormal related question that your little heart desires. And I will try to give you my awesome skeptical opinion. And our guest tonight will give his opinion, I'm sure, because he likes to talk just as much as I do. Rule number 2, and I'm going to ignore the fact that I can see him in the green room giving me the finger. Rule number 2 is I don't know everything. And that's...
Shocker.
I know.
Like, what the fuck?
Divine Donna jumps right in. Wow, what commentary. Okay, muting her mic now. So, if I have to look something up, if the guest that we have tonight doesn't know what you're talking about, or we have to look something up, we will, because we have the technology. $6 million man technology. Rule number 3 is listen to Patrick Swayze. That's the golden rule. Be nice. We can have debates. We can discuss. We can question. We can disagree. That's fine. But make sure you don't be a dick. Because if you do, Divine Donna over on the producer's seat will boot you out of here. Boot. Rule number 4 is please put a Q in front of your questions so that it's easier for Donna to pick them out and put them up on screen for us, and we can get to them. And then rule number 5, the rule I love the most, drink up. So now with that done, there it is. I can actually get rid of this. I can go to my special guest banner and bring on my guest. There he is.
Oh, he's got a skull mug too.
He's got a skull mug.
It's skull night.
Oh, right. Let me say hi to everybody, because I just got into the comments. John, Mike, Audra, Donna's here twice. Well, you're here and here. I see
by locating.
I'm still figuring out everybody. All right, Barry, what's up? JD, Diane, everyone's here. Bob. All right, Ben Radford. Holy crap! What?
Did you hit Barry?
Did I hit Barry? Yeah, I said Barry.
Okay.
Hi, Barry. Hey, Ben. What's up, man?
Hey, Kenny. Just busy, but you know, it's Halloween season. That's always the craziest time, as you know.
Yeah.
You know, there's crazy shit all year, but it seems to be condensed in the weeks before Halloween. Everybody wants to talk about ghosts and spooky things. The good thing, and I'm not sure if it's good or bad, but the relief is that this is the first Halloween in my memory, with maybe the exception of last Halloween, that we didn't have a mini evil clown scare during Halloween. As you know, this has been a recurring theme. I wrote about it in one of my books. And
you wrote about this? What?
What?
Let me see here.
The clown book?
Do I have that? I think I have that.
The freaky cover book?
I know I have that because
there
I
you
have
go.
all
There's
Ben
my
Radford's
Bad
book.
Clowns book.
There you go.
So yeah, so it was. This was the first time in my recent memory that there wasn't at least one. I think there actually was. Actually, I take that back. So a friend of mine in Detroit, I think it was Rojan, somebody sent me some crazy ass. It's Detroit, right? So like there was some guy in a clown costume, like waving machine gun at somebody. I'm like, well, of course that's Detroit. But beyond that, there wasn't the usual crazy evil clown stuff. So there's that.
Wow. All right. Well, I'm glad. I guess so, because I used to hate clowns. Now it doesn't really bother me, but I used to hate them all the time. Oh, hated them. And I think it's because of Poltergeist, the original one, not the remake bullshit one that was out, because that sucked.
But the original Poltergeist, I mean, people don't remember. I mean, the clown in that was a small part. It was a cameo of a cameo.
But it's a bigger. It made the most impact.
Well,
I don't
maybe
care
to your
about...
impressionable, rum-addled mind, but for the rest of us, it's like, oh, there's a clown.
It was a clown. It attacked a kid, and I mean, besides
It was in
the
a closet,
weird,
or in a
ver-
chair. Was it in a chair?
it was in a chair for a while,
Well, yeah.
and it was under the bed. But then, like, the only other thing that really stands out in that movie is the horrible, horrible special effects when all the stuff was flying around the room, and the one like cowboy on the horse was like,
Right.
like that looked awful. Then
Wow.
that stands out.
Yes, that's true.
Whew. All right, so tonight we're going to talk about The Entity, and this was it's based on true events. I got to put the air quotes up there.
Right.
Based on true events. It was a book, and then it was then it became a movie, which I have somewhere here. I was trying to find it. I was desperately trying to find it before the show, but I don't know where it is. But we wrote about it recently.
Yes. So yeah, it's interesting because over the years, as there's the marquee based on true story cases, right? There's everybody goes to The Exorcist, everybody goes to Amityville, some of the Conjuring stuff, the Snedekers, and that sort of thing. But the Entity case was always sort of flew under the radar.
Right.
And it was kind of odd to me because I mean it was well known. I mean, it was a Barbara Hershey film, this and that. It never achieved the marquee blockbuster status of The Exorcist, of course.
Right.
But but still I would say every year or two, Barry Cart, CFI, or I, or Joe Nickel would get a query from just random people saying, hey, what's the real story behind The Exorcist, or behind The Entity? And I'd never gotten around to it. I mean, you and I are both busy. We can't, if we stopped what we were doing and replied to every single person that emails us,
right,
we get nothing done. So anyway, finally, I guess it's maybe been like 9 months or so ago. I was like, well, let me go ahead and tackle it. Actually, to be honest, originally I had begun writing it up as a column for my Skeptical Inquiry column for Skeptical Inquirer magazine, because I do a column every issue where people write in and ask me questions, and I try to
right.
answer it. But as I was writing it, I realized that it was suddenly I'm like, there's no way I can do this in 2-3 pages. This is
right.
This is a rabbit hole. I'm like, okay, so I shelved that. I said that I can't turn this into a column. There's just too much there. There's too many facets and this and that. And then so okay, well let me sort of let me turn into a full article.
Right.
And then that's when I realized that, of course, there was this whole secondary aspect to it, which is actually kind of central to it, which is the photographs. I'm like, who do I know that does awesome investigations of photographs? And like,
I don't know.
No, I mean, eventually, the best I can come up with is you, which you that was bottom of the barrel. But I'm like, maybe Kenny can do this. I don't know. So sure enough, so I reached out to you, and we did a pretty good tag team investigation, and it's actually in the current issue of SI, as you have there.
Yes, got my copy.
Yes, with the cover illustration, I might add, by my Scoring the Strange co-host Celestia Ward.
Yes,
caricaturist, an artist of some note who did an awesome cover here. So it's kind of a nice little collaborative thing. And we also had to round it out, we had an article by J.D. Sword, who looked into the true story of Roland Doe, the boy behind The Exorcist. So sort of a package piece together. So that was fun.
And JD's in the chat room, so he's going to be happy that
there you go.
You mentioned him. Yeah, I'm going to have him on. I'm going to try and schedule him later and talk about The Exorcist and talk about the story behind that and stuff. So, but yeah, I mean, this was a great idea. I loved it when you sent me the message saying, hey, you want to look into it. It was the same for me. Like I've known about the film. I've watched the film a few times. It's more of like a cult classic than a blockbuster, because not many people know about the movie. And when you say it, it's kind of like 50-50. Some people
there's a recognition of it, but it's not. Right. It's like, wasn't that? And then when because as you mentioned, a lot of these are based on a true story. Make of that what you will. And then so the natural question is, well, what is the true story behind it, right? And so that was sort of like, okay, well, let's dig into it. I mean, you and I are certainly qualified to tackle it. So I'm like, let's go ahead and put a nail in this, put a nail in this coffin and see what we do with it.
and this was on my bucket list for a while.
Cool.
Like I said, I've known about it. I haven't read the book. I have the book. I've watched the movie several times. I grew up remembering that episode of Sightings when it was featured,
Right.
and seeing Carrie Gaynor on there talking about the photographs. And I had always wanted to go back and just I know I can take these apart. I know what I'm pretty sure I know what these are. So it was, when you sent that out, I was like, yeah, damn right. Yeah, let's do this. Let's get to it. So let's dive into some of the story. What's the basic story behind this film or book or experience?
Yeah, so I'll try and summarize it. There's actually a lot to it. But I'll sort of give the thumbnail version, and it's one of those things where you can sort of quickly go down a rabbit hole, right? Because there's all sorts of, but in a nutshell, the basic story is the basic allegedly true story, and again, one thing that's interesting about this case is that there's sort of layers of truth to it. In other words, there's currently, as with a lot of cases, like with the Exorcist or Amityville, I mean, there are kernels of truth, nuggets of actual people that just occurred to them, and so on. And then the question is, okay, but once we establish the particulars, how much of these other claims are true and how much is evidence for? So, in a nutshell, basically, the story behind the entity involves a woman named Doris Bither. She was a woman, I think, in Culver City, California, and she basically got involved with two paranormal investigators, Barry Taff and Carrie Gaynor, who you mentioned, and they sort of, so the way they got involved in it is more or less accurately, as far as we know, depicted in the film, in which they were actually in a bookstore, and the Taff and Gaynor were in a bookstore, and they overheard discussion, and it was a woman who, it's not clear whether it was Bither or Bither's friend, but in any event, they were discussing this, and they said, "Hey, do you guys investigate the paranormal?" And in fact, Taff was a parapsychologist at UCLA and had some affiliation there. And so he's like, "Yeah, that's what we do.
Let's do it.
Let's do this, right?" And so basically, from what we can tell, they sort of went into this. At first, they were skeptical. They're like, this lady, whatever else. So as they came to know the story, basically it was this woman. And Bither's story is really tragic. She was a drug user. She was an alcoholic. She was living in squalid conditions at the time. She had several failed marriages. And I think she's living with 3 boys, teenagers, and a young daughter. And basically her story was just like really messed up. It was just abuse and drug use and just all sorts of bad things going on. And layered on top of all this, she was claiming that she was being basically experiencing poltergeist activity, including the subset of activities. The one that sort of was the most dramatic and sensational, the one that was sort of exploited or highlighted in the entity film was sexual assault. But that was only sort of the most lurid or sensational of the claims. There are a bunch of other ones as well. But of course, that was the one that Frank DeFelitta, the writer of the book, sort of latched onto. And so Taff and Gaynor sort of went into this, and they soon determined, rightly or wrongly, I mean, we can get into that later, but they soon determined that there actually was something in fact going on. That it wasn't just a woman who was having, drug-induced hallucinations or misperceptions or whatever else, that there actually was something going on. So they did investigations over the course, I think, of a couple months. Then not really much came of it. If you read Taft's book, I think it's titled Aliens Above, Ghosts Below, or something like that.
Got it.
Aliens Above, Ghosts Below, yeah. He talks about this case, and it's kind of his marquee case. I mean, if you look online, you can find many interviews with Taft talking about this case, because of course it's by far his most famous one. So he's happy to talk about it, even some 50 years later. There's so there's information on that. And so anyway, so in terms of so what I did, so when I was researching the thing, I intentionally did not look into whether the film paralleled the books, because it's easy to do that, right? It's easy to fall into the trap of, okay, well, is it, they changed this thing for the film, they changed this. I didn't even want to get into that, because that wasn't the question. The question wasn't, how was the dramatic narrative change or the story arc, whatever else.
This isn't like a YouTube channel that compares movies and to the original material and points out
Exactly,
that kind of stuff. We were looking at the story.
Exactly. So basically, in a nutshell, beginning in August 1974, the two of them, and later on bring in more and more people, which is inherently problematic from an investigative point of view. Anyway, but I'll come back to that. They went and investigated. They were trying to investigate all of these things were going on in this woman's house, and there was the typical ghost, the now typical ghostly things, like cold spots, weird sounds, feeling weird things, and things like that. So there was that typical thing. And they also recorded and photographed some light streaks, which later turned out to be sort of their marquee evidence. And we can go into that a bit later, but basically, and they tried to do a series of experiments. And as somebody who has actually done some of these experiments, I have to tell you, I was remarkably unimpressed with the quality of the research, the protocols. It seemed like there were.
It was a mess.
I think they were sincere,
right?
But they just violated all sorts of scientific protocols, and it didn't help that Taft believes himself to be psychic. He held seances. If you need us to explain why holding seances is not a scientific process, Kenny and I can do that, but just leaving that aside for the moment. Anyway, so just to circle back for a second to the sexual assault claim. So, in the end, there was actually no evidence at all for the whole premise of the film. Right. So what happened was that Bither had told the investigators that several weeks earlier she had been assaulted, and so she did make that claim, but it didn't happen after they began to be involved, and so all they could go by was what she had said happened a long time earlier, and there was no evidence of that. There was no photographs. There was no eyewitnesses. The bruising had healed up and things like that. So in terms of the central sensational core claim about the entity, again regarding the assault, even Taft and Gaynor admitted that they had no real evidence for that, but that didn't stop them from going on and trying to do an investigation, and including some photographs, which is where you sort of
well, yeah, I mean, they did a few investigations. I forget how many exactly. I think 7 or 8 times they went back
over the course of like 10 weeks or 12 weeks or something.
Yeah. So it wasn't a constant vigil. It was just, every couple of weeks they went back, and they got some photographs, and I'm going to share the initial photographs that they had said. Let me see if it pops up here. So they took some photographs with Polaroid camera. They had 2 cameras when they showed up the first time, and the one was a 35 millimeter camera loaded with infrared film that they messed up. Just to put it bluntly, they messed it up.
Are you being mean?
No, I'm being just straightforward.
They admit they messed up.
They admit it. Yeah. Okay. So in his book, which contains a reprint of the article, I guess, that he wrote about it. He wrote it up. It wasn't like an academic paper. It wasn't.
No, it wasn't. Yeah, and there's something a little sketchy about that, because if you see some of the stuff that Barry Taft has written, he makes it sound like this has all been very validated. He says, for example, these photographs were authenticated. He uses that word.
Right.
We'll come back to that in a second.
We're going to come back to that. Yeah.
By Popular Photography, and he sort of framed his research as if it had been like published in peer-reviewed journals. And and when you start digging into it, and I just want to add this before you go on, is that investigating the history of this is a bit difficult, because basically he is the source, right? It's Barry Taff and his book, and again, there's different versions of it. There's one on his website and so on, but it's not as if we have independent corroboration. It's not like Gaynor wrote a book about it. It's not like we have people coming out of the woodwork to say, yes, I was there, despite, and we'll touch on this later, despite dozens of people allegedly being there and being witnesses and recording these things, and yet where are they? So when I was doing the research on it, you have to keep in mind that because of how old it is, Bither's now dead, and so a lot of the principles are no longer involved, and so he's the main source for this, for better or for worse.
And I mean, honestly, we're going off of this one, like you said, this one entry in this book. And we're talking about a case 50 years ago. The house is still there, but it's been owned by several people. It looks like it's been fixed up because it was twice condemned when she was living there. Right. So it was really, really, just to put it bluntly, it was shitty conditions that they were living in. So lots of things can go on. Mold, animals, just
cracks, cold drafts
in the walls, water leaks. There's a lot to consider there. So, all right, let me share this this screen here. We're gonna have to take off this. So here are some of the initial pictures. They did take a bunch. These are the three that they really showcase. And from what the report says, the woman in the picture is not Doris Bither, and that's a mistake that we've seen dozens of times. Lots of websites that talk about the story call this woman Doris Bither. It was actually a friend of Doris's who claimed to be psychic, and I think her name was Candy. Yeah. So
Candy and her Ouija board. Okay. Well, yes. We're off to a rolling start for this.
Boom,
guys.
Boom. So the idea here was that Taff and Gaynor kept saying that they were getting activity. Every time that they would Candy here would scream out that she was seeing it. It's over there, or it's there. And in these cases, these pictures you see, she was saying, it's right in front of my face. They would snap a picture and get what you see on the center picture and the left picture, washed out, overexposed. And this happened several times. But then when Candy said it was gone, the picture would turn out, quote unquote, normal. And right. I did a comparison here just to show, and one of the things that I pointed out was these hard shadows. If you can see my pointer here, the hard shadows, anybody that does photography knows what these are. These are hard shadows because the flash is way too close, it's overexposed, and this is what happens. It throws a shadow off the subject onto the background, and you get this very dark contrast of a shadow behind them. But when you step away and you don't use a flash, you get a normal picture, which is the one on the right. And it comes out pretty normal. And one of the things that they were trying to say was that you could still see the details of the curtains behind. So there was nothing wrong with the pictures. And I have a problem with that because, I mean, if you look at this left or the right hand picture, you can see that, you can still see the curtains, but they're very dark.
Sure. They're not washed out from the flash.
They're not washed out.
What's the mystery here? I mean, come on.
So this is an example that I did, and this appears in the magazine where I did the same thing. I didn't use a flash for the left picture and took a picture of, this is our dummy that I use for weird stuff. Don't ask. But I took it
that's between you and Donna, man. It's between you and Donna.
Normal.
you asked for that.
Normal ambient light. That's it. Same conditions, ambient light. Taken with a Polaroid camera. The second picture, same thing. Except I used a flash on this, and I turned the exposure up. And one of the things that really caught my attention, and I point this out is that when they were talking, when Carrie Gaynor was on the episode of Sightings, he made what I think is a Freudian slip and said that when he took the normal picture that they adjusted the settings, or they didn't adjust the settings for this one. And the way he said it, I was like, wait a minute. Wait, what do you mean you didn't adjust the settings for this one?
And this is supposed to be the control photo, right?
This is, yeah, for the control photo.
The control.
So yeah, for
I
the
don't
control
think that
photo
word means what you think it means.
So I'm looking at it, and this is the camera that they have. They were using the Polaroid SX70. I have one of these, and the thing is, and I don't have a close up. I think I don't. Yeah, I don't think I have a close up. But right here, there's an electric eye. It looks at the environment and says what kind of light. But right above it, there's a light control. There's a little dial, and it's kind of the same on the other side with your focus. It's really easy to push that over and say, oh, I'm going to go all the way to the light side, which would overexpose your subject, especially when you're up close. Because something here, I mean, look at these pictures. Look at the first two pictures compared to the third picture on the right, and the distance from the camera to the subject.
Yeah, I mean, they're not even. I mean, they're
not
apples and oranges here. I mean,
yeah.
So there, if what they're trying to sell us from these photographs is, look at the first two, isn't this weird? And look at this normal photo, it's taken under different conditions. We can tell that just from the
from the exposure.
There's your answer right there. It's not because there's a ghost in front of you.
Right. And I mean, this is something that you can do over and over again. And yeah, they were using a Polaroid camera. There were a lot more photos that I didn't see. So, I mean, you have to remember back during this time, Polaroid was still very popular. It was, I mean, especially the SX70, that was like the workhorse. That was the most popular camera that they put out, and it was everywhere. You got 10 shots per film pack that you put in that camera. And the numbers that they talked about, how many pictures they had, didn't add up to how many they would have had. So there's more pictures that are somewhere, but I don't see them. And I think one had like an orb in it, which it kills me. But I mean, in all honesty, I mean, it's the same kind of condition. You had the flash directly above the lens, and that's what creates most of your orb effects, with dust particles going in front of the lens, and it just light up. And we're talking about old school here, the light bars. I should have grabbed my camera and brought it up. But the light bars were just extremely low tech, nothing like what we have today. I mean, you're literally causing a small explosion inside of a plastic case, which is fascinating. But yeah, I mean, these pictures, they are not evidence of anything to me except improper handling of the camera.
Right. Well, and I mean, you know, we can't fault them for not using modern technology. Obviously, right. I mean, they can only use what they have. But that's not the issue here. The issue is that any competent or even slightly competent photographer knows what this is.
Yeah.
I mean, this is what baffles me, is that this and one of the other photos you're going to show are held up as the main evidence. It's not as if, oh, we have this mountain of evidence, and by the way, there's these photos. It's like,
right.
We did this big investigation. We were all these poltergeists, amazing things. There's activity. We were in the presence of the paranormal, and yes,
this
is what you got. Okay,
this is not good, and I don't think it was from the report and from the interviews that they did that I could find. They just didn't have the expertise to look at these photos and tell them what it was. Yes, JD, I think we are, in a polite way. You know, I mean, you kind of made it clear, like in your article, you have this tone over the entire article that they were trying to be sincere. And I really got the impression that these two guys were excited ghost hunters.
Yeah.
They were not doing scientific studies or experiments. They were excited ghost hunters that saw an opportunity. So, I mean, we're talking when we mentioned The Exorcist, the book came out in 71, the film was released in 73. Big
Right.
hit. Both big, huge hits. Amityville Horror, the book came out in 77. And that was a big hit. The film came out in 79, big hit. So The Entity, the book was released in 78, a year after the Amityville Horror. So it was trying to capitalize on that. I get it. But when you present stuff like this, it's disappointing. It's really disappointing to me.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that I mean, Taff. I mean, as far as I know, he does have a doctorate. I think it's in I've forgotten what it is. It's not in ghost hunting. It's in psycho something or other. I just don't have it in front of me. But I mean, he does have a degree in it. And I think that part of what happened here is that he had some standing he was affiliated with UCLA, a prominent university, and he was with this parapsychology group. And so I think that he and his colleagues and friends, they felt like they were on the cutting edge of experimenting with psi and ghosts,
Right.
and this and that. And this case falls into their laps, almost literally, right? They're in a bookstore, and this woman they get the story of this woman who's experiencing these things at this very moment. This didn't happen, years and years ago. They're like, oh my God, can you help this woman out?
Right.
And I think that they sort of jumped at that. They're like, oh my God, this is our chance to make our name for ourselves, to investigate this. And as you touched on, I think they sincerely thought they were doing good research. And they're like, look at us, we're trying to do this thing. And when you read Taft's stuff, his writings, I mean, he's kind of turgid is kind of the word. I mean, he's not a dumb guy. He's intelligent, but unfortunately, it's in service of pseudoscience. And when you look at the methodologies and you read his accounts, I mean, I'm reading it, I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
This is not you claim to be a psychic. You're bringing in psychics. You got Ouija boards. You're holding seances. This is not scientific.
Right.
They did try to do a couple of talk about the blacked out curtains.
Oh, so I mean, we can move on. Yeah, because I'm pretty much done with these. Except the only thing I want to say before we move on to the next set of photos is that the two wheels on the camera, and when we go to commercial break in like a half hour, we'll swing back. I'll run down and get the camera so I can show everyone. But when you're holding this camera, you're holding it pretty much like this. It's an awkward camera to hold. But there's two wheels. One is to focus, one is to set the exposure. If you mistake the one for the exposure dial, if you mistakenly move it, there's no indicator that tells you changed that. There's nothing. Right. And if you're
nothing through the viewfinder is gonna, there's
right.
no.
You have a viewfinder that is just a mirror pathway through the lens. And you're just looking straight through. You get no indication. It's not digital cameras or even the advanced 35 millimeters where you have a heads up display in the viewfinder. Right. You have nothing. The only time you're adjusting anything is when you hit the focus dial, because you obviously see the focus. And these two, the first two photos, the left and the center, are actually out of focus. And the right one is more in focus than the other two, but it's subtle. And you see, I don't know how well you can see it on the screen, you guys watching, but when I see the most original that I can see or achieve of these, they are still blurry. So it might have been just honest mistakes, but how it turned out, the ratio of ghost photos versus control photos, from my opinion, I don't think it was completely mistake.
Yeah, I mean, you can't look at these photographs and think that they were taken on the same settings. They obviously weren't. They just simply weren't. Yeah. There's the flash. There's lots of things, and literally because of that, you can't compare them. You can't say, oh, these two on the left were when there was a ghost in front of her, and the one on the right wasn't. Like there's not a control here. You're
right. All right. So let's see, going through. So this, and then the next picture that'll show up. These are the two most famous pictures that they promote from this case. So why don't you set the stage? They were, and then I'll get into more of the blacked out curtains or windows and stuff like that. So what were they trying to get here?
Yeah, so again, I'm leaving out a bunch of details because there's lots of different stuff, and you can check out Taft's book. So I'm just going to sort of simplify it. But over the course of, again, I think 10, 12 weeks in 74, they kept going back to the house. They couldn't investigate the sexual assault because it had already happened weeks earlier, and there was no evidence of it. And obviously, no one wanted it to happen again. But they were at least engaged in the process. So if there was something similar, they could have investigated it, but it didn't happen again. At least that particular thing didn't happen again. Now, they did claim, if you read through Taft's account, there are a couple of things that they say. They claim that, for example, on one occasion, something flew across the air, like out of the kitchen, and flew. So they claim these things happen. Now, again, there's no evidence of this, right? So they say this happened in their very presence, and they may be right. I don't know. But my question is, you're the top-notch investigators, right? You're the dudes, right? You're the ones going in there to do these things. Why wasn't this recorded? If you're going to go into investigation and you're hoping that some sort of paranormal activity happens around you, why aren't you recording things to capture that evidence? This is basic 101 protocols that they were sort of fumbling through on these things. Anyway, so over the course of, they would go back to Bither, who oftentimes, and I don't know if you mentioned this earlier, Kenny, and you'll relate to this, she was often drunk. So this is part of the problem, right? Is that you have this woman who's claiming to be assaulted and physically, and just things going on, and she's evasive. She wouldn't answer questions about her mental history, the drugs, medication she was on. She didn't want to tell them how old she was. And these are questions that Taft and Gaynor didn't press them on. And he writes about this. He says, well, we didn't want to push her to tell us more about her situation, including her mental history. Well, that's what you do as an investigator.
Yes,
that's part of your job.
Yeah.
If you're going to tiptoe around, well, we don't want to. Like, no, I mean, this is not. You're not being mean. You're trying to figure out what the hell is going on, and part of what's going on might involve her drug history. Part of what's going on might involve other things around there. And so for them to sort of step back, like, well, we didn't ask about this again. This is not. So there were lots of really glaring holes in the investigation process here, but they did, to their credit, they did try to make a couple of attempts to bring some scientific methodology and controls, obviously not in the photographs, to try and what's going on. So as you mentioned in this particular photograph. And I don't even know who these people are. This is something else. Right. They're just they invited their friends over. Like, oh, come on, we got a party at the Bither's house, right? There's like, do you want to come in our investigation, right? And so, ideally there would be lists of people. Who were they? When were they there? Times in, times out. Who was where in the house? Instead, it's this sort of free for all of just people coming and going, and we get the psychics and. This is just not how you conduct an investigation. Anyway, but they did try. They went back a handful of times, and each time, sometimes they would say, "Oh, this just happened." Like, okay, well, oh, it's a shame you guys just showed up because yesterday. Well, it's always like just missed, right? So, on a couple occasions, they did bring the equipment, and this is one of the photos. One of the results of those where they were trying to. Photograph something in the air. And so one of the claims they had was that there were these streaks of light zipping across the room. And Taft describes this in several places. And it's sort of like these, and they actually start trying to ask questions of the light streaks in the same way that, for example, ghost hunters on TV might say, is there a spirit here? Give us a sign.
Right.
And they wait, or they have like, the battery with the flashlight with the battery, all the sorts of stuff. And so so Taft describes seeing, and apparently other people seeing, little streaks of light going here and there. And apparently he claims or suggests that they were sentient and they were reacting to questions that were being asked. And so in an attempt to capture this, now why they only thought about doing this weeks into the investigation, I don't know. But eventually they got around to saying, hey, we got cameras. let's see what we can do. And so that, as I recall, the setup, I mean, I don't know the exact date this was taken, but that's the setup of what's going on here.
So this is great because this, and I'm gonna read from his report in his book, and this is leading up to this photograph here. It says, our fifth visit to Doris's house resulted in a large-scale magnification of all phenomenon. We began by duct taping large black poster boards up on the walls and ceiling of the bedroom, all of which were numbered and identified with magnetic orientation. White duct tape was placed between the dark panels that formed a grid network, like graph paper, therein providing us with a reference for further attempts at photographing the lights. Black poster boards were also used to seal off all light entrances into the bedroom that rendered the environment almost pitch black. With over 30 individuals. This is important, people. This whole paragraph, everything that I'm reading is very important. And I want everyone in the chat room to point out what might be wrong with this. With over 30 individuals, some of whom were volunteers from our UCLA parapsychology laboratory, the lights returned and were even more brilliant than before, as well as demonstrating a direct responsiveness to our verbal suggestions. The three-dimensional lights seemingly reacted and responded to our jokes and various provoking remarks, especially those of Doris. And then it goes on to keep describing like some of the things of the lights. And then let's see, at the end, it says the photographs resulting from this evening's encounter surprisingly did not reveal the incredibly detailed images of the masses of light we observed with our naked eyes. Instead, were brilliant arcs of light, one essentially framing Doris. He's talking specifically about this one.
Right.
The others were floating in the middle of the bedroom when Doris was not even present in the room. So lots of things. Lots of things wrong with it.
Lot of things, lot of flags there.
So yeah, I mean, as I said, like this was the visit that led up to this photograph. The entire setup was for this photograph. There are not black panels on the walls with white duct tape separating them in a grid-like pattern.
Hold on. Oh, you're right.
Yes, there is nothing there. This timeline from Taft specifically states that there should be a grid on that wall, on both walls, because that's a corner there on the right. There should be a grid pattern, including the ceiling.
And it's possible that the grids were on the other two walls. In which case, why is this?
Why is everyone facing the other?
Why is everybody facing that way?
We have his testimony that says over 30 individuals. Where this really kills me too, that it says 30 individuals, some of whom were volunteers from our UCLA parapsychology laboratory. Some, who the hell were the other people?
Right. Do you not know who was there?
That's so wrong, because you have no control over the environment. You have no idea what anyone is doing. And for me, when I look at this picture, I see so much wrong. And I also want to inject here that it wasn't just my opinion that went into this. There was a friend of mine and colleague, Paul Michael Kane, who is a literally world-renowned photographer and graphic designer. I called him up and we actually went for like 2 hours talking about these photographs. And we're in a complete agreement on these things, where this is most likely someone else, one of 30 some people in the room that got too close with hair. Because I've done examples and I want to show you, let me see. I'll show you the other picture here. That's the other photo that they promote. Again, no black panels.
Right.
You had the same similar inverted semicircles here. But this is a picture from my basement showing a similar anomaly.
You had the same ghost? This is crazy.
Well,
you had Doris Bither's ghost.
I called him in, Ben. I called him in.
Wow. This goes deeper than I ever expected.
I mean, these photos
unless his hair.
They're just not good. It doesn't represent the setup that we were told was in the room. There are so many people in this room. I mean, when we go back to here, we can count, like Doris Bither is sitting on the bed. And at one point in the report, it says something about her cowering down because of all the lights going around. But like she looks completely uninterested in what's going on.
Actually.
Yeah. But
and she and more to the point, she certainly doesn't look like she's reacting to anything going on above or around her.
Right. And these things, if you look, like you can see my pointer here. So first of all, this arc, which is usually cut out of promotional material, usually you only get, like, you see the hand maybe of this woman here. At least I hope it's a woman. And then you see this main arc. You don't get to see this other one because it's lighter, but it tells you that this is in front of this person here.
Right.
So it's closer to the camera than it is to anybody else in here. Same with this arc here, because if you look at the end, it actually goes over this person that's over here, because there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 people, including Doris, 10 that are in the photograph.
At least, yeah.
At least.
Yeah.
11 with the photographer. And then who else? I don't know who else is next to him or behind him or whatever, but there's way too many people packed in there. And if the lights are going, if these green lights are going like he says they are, why is this person just holding their camera and not doing anything?
Right. Yeah, you know? Nobody there. I mean, if this is genuinely a photograph of what people look like when they're experiencing amazing, awe-inspiring paranormal activity in front of them, then it's even less impressive. They look. There's nothing going on. They're the guy on the right hand side who actually kind of looks like my dad in the late 70s, with the mustache. I mean, they're not reacting to anything in the photograph. Right. No one is alarmed. No one's taking photographs, and that tells us that what we see in this image is an artifact of the photographic process. It's not something that's literally out there. It's something that was seen in the negative.
Yeah. And I mean, the camera that was being used, it was let me see, I have it here. It was a ordinary shots on a Tri-X with 20 millimeter lens on a modestly priced SLR. So they were using Kodak Tri-X film, which is only 400 speed. As far as I know, it was only 400 speed at the time, which it's not great for this environment, especially what they were doing, because
for low light. I mean, you want,
well, they were using
not
only a flash, because they used a flash in this, but they used a red filter over top of the flash. Not an infrared filter, but just a red filter over top. So it's pretty much a glass film or a red film that went over the flash. Not much at all. And in this case, what I'm gathering from the article, and I'm reading from Popular Photography, because we'll get into that in a second. But
there's more to the story, folks. Hold on.
It looked like the flash was to the side. And again, you can see, I'm going to try and point it out here, along the side of her right there are hard shadows that we're seeing. So that's telling me that the flash was to the camera or to our viewing angle, it was on the left side of the camera.
Yeah.
So it's shooting at the shadows to the right. So there's so much wrong with this. Uh-oh. Am I still on? Yeah.
Yeah, you're still on.
Okay.
You're
I'm
frozen, but I can see I
Okay.
can see your pointer moving.
Okay. So yeah, there's not much else going on here that I would say is interesting. It's kind of boring.
Yeah, and I just keep coming back to the fact that presumably between Taft and Gaynor and their 30, 50, hundreds, who the hell knows? Why aren't there hundreds of photographs, and where are they?
Right.
You would assume that if they're more dramatic and sensational and more interesting than this, we would have seen them, right? So they presumably they're even less impressive than these, and these, when you take a closer look, are not impressive at all.
Right. It's just not the evidence that you would expect. And again, it's not. I love how my frozen picture is pointing right at you.
I know, I like that.
Like, you the man. Let me see what happens when I turn my camera off. Maybe if I
keep it that way. I like it. That's good.
Okay. All right. So yeah, there's just not anything going on here. And it's just there's telltale signs of what this probably is. It's probably hair close to the lens, and we're talking 1974. So perms were a big thing. Lots of people are going to have them. Your 30 plus people that are packed into the room. Oh, there I am. Cool. Your 30 plus people that we have no idea who they are. No idea whatsoever who they are. Yeah, they could be right next to the camera. And what were we going with? Oh, if we don't know who they are, we don't know why they were there, what they were doing, and something that you pointed out. Where are they?
This is one thing that I when I was sort of going through again, all I really had to go with was the interviews that Taft had given and his book there and various write-ups, and there's a lot of material there. He's a verbose man, so there's no shortage of details, but the problem is those details aren't enlightening. They're just sort of like, it's more stuff. It just really sort of brings more questions. Like, well, hold on here. And so, I have to. At one point, I think I quoted in the article, I think he mentions nearly 50 people. Now, I don't doubt. I don't think that's not true. I believe that there were lots of people there because he says it, and there's in the photographs. But my question is, given the notoriety of the entity and being made in a Hollywood film, and Barbara Hershey, all those sort of things, why aren't people coming out of the woodwork to say, "Oh my God, I was there. Here's my story. I'm part of this amazing story." Blah blah blah. Where are they? If amazing paranormal events happened, then it's just odd to me that, and especially, if they were things that, as Taft and Gaynor described, were widely seen. This isn't something that only they saw. They say, "Oh my God, everybody looked at this, and there's all these witnesses." Where else? Where's their accounts? And even if we go with Taft and Gaynor sort of being the principals, and by this point, basically Taft. Gaynor's still around. I think he's a hypnotherapist and smoking cessation hypnotherapist in Hollywood or something.
Yeah.
Taft is still around. But even then, right? So I hate to keep coming back to their crappy methodologies, but it's astonishingly bad research.
Right.
They should have cameras everywhere. They should know exactly who's there. They should have documentation. They say, "You were here tonight. Please write down what you experienced. Sign it, date it, notarize it, whatever. Get the information instead of like, hey everybody, bring Candy the psychic, bring the Ouija board. We're gonna go check out these things and bring your friends, and we'll see if something weird happens." This isn't how you investigate.
Right. All right, we're gonna hit some questions and then move on because I know that people had questions up. It's not Donna's fault that we're not getting questions up. We're really getting into it. So Yeah, if you have questions you want to pop up,
Now you want me to find them.
free plug.
What the
Free
fuck?
plug. I'll answer JD's question
Yeah,
first because
answer that
I saw
one.
that. So the red filter is it's a placeholder. It's not a real. I mean, they're trying to do something because it was dark. It was supposed to be dark. They turned the lights out and they're trying to use a flash. And instead of making this very, very harsh, glaring, bright white light, like shock everyone because everyone's, they're all there. They're all waiting for these weird lights to float around. So they're probably all wide-eyed. Their pupils are the size of their eyeballs, trying to see everything. And then all of a sudden you get this red or this white flash. It's very harsh and it can be painful. So sometimes they put a red filter on it just to dial it back, dial the bright harshness back, and it filters out some of the light. And it almost, it's like they're trying to do night vision kind of thing or infrared photography. That's probably what they're trying to go for,
Right.
but it's not infrared photography. They're just trying to filter out everything except red light.
Now, Kenny, I have a quick question, and I forgive me if I don't type in the chat, but I'm the special guest, as you can tell.
Whatever.
So, and again, I genuinely don't know the answer to this, so I'm questioning. So in you're looking at this in contact, I think at one point you contacted Gaynor, and that's like, do you have any indication that either one of these people had experience in photography?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I reached out to both Taft and Gaynor. Gaynor was the only one that got back to me, and his response, just to put it out there, it was useless. All he did was repeat what was already said. I sent follow-up questions detailing like, hey, you did this, you did that. Here's the things that I saw in these pictures, these specific details. Can you comment on that?
Yeah.
And nothing. I didn't get any further response from him. But yeah, there's no indication at all that they have experience in photography. So,
well, which is fine. I mean, that's not a, not everybody does. But again, if you're going to present this high profile case and your 10-week investigation, and you present yourselves as parapsychologists, and in the end, the best evidence you offer is photographs, then the fact that you're not familiar with photography is kind of problematic.
If you're, from my perspective, if you're going to use, we are the UCLA parapsychology department, then I would think that you would go out to the photography department and say, hey, can we borrow a few people that know what they're doing? Come on out. We need you to take some pictures instead of trying to do it themselves. Just the fact, I mean, in the opening statements and what he says in the beginning, what Taft admits that they messed up their infrared film. It tells you that they're not familiar with it, and they probably should not have been messing with it on an investigation that was supposed to be so important.
Yeah, hire a photographer.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I mean, seriously, I mean, I'm not being facetious. If you're an investigator and you think you have this amazing, possibly unprecedented access to actual paranormal claims, including sexual assault of ghosts and this and that, get a photographer, get somebody who knows what they're doing. I mean, if you have any inkling this could be turned into something big, and people could be talking about it 50 years from now in Hollywood film, document this. I mean, this is your job, dude.
Right.
I mean, I hate to, I mean, but come on.
All right, one more question.
Right, one more question. I know there was a couple questions. All right. So Audra says, if people were moving, shouldn't you get streaks from them moving? If what they were saying was going on, wouldn't you think people would be looking all around? So if people were moving, shouldn't you get streaks from them moving? Not necessarily, no. Because if you have, for one, if you have a slow shutter, which is usually what causes streaks, light streaks that we know today, usually from bugs flying in front of the lens or dust particles that reflect the light. a long exposure will do that. And if people are in that, then yes, you might have that. But if they're sitting around like what we see in that other picture, where they're sitting around kind of bored, they're not really moving. So you're not going to get it. I don't think these were slow shutters at all. I think these were fast shutters. And I think he actually mentions that. I think Taft mentions that in here, because he also takes, again, the Tri-X film that they were using was 400 speed. And I think they pushed it up because you can overdevelop up to like 6400 ISO, which is, I think these photos that we just looked at, the two black and whites, were much darker before. And I think they pushed them up to a lighter, overdeveloped, almost overexposing them to get the clarity that you have here. That's why there's a lot of strict black and white, like a very, very hard contrast between the two. So you wouldn't necessarily have blurring people because it's not a long exposure. And with that said, that's another reason why I think this is more likely hair in front of the lens, because it's not actually a streak. It's just a length of hair that's in front of the lens that it's already out of focus because it's too close. And when the flash hits it, you get that washed out, overexposed look. So it's blurry. So that's what I would think. Audra. Yeah. What do you think? Good? Yeah. I was like, yep.
I know a lot. You know more about the photographic side than I do, which is why you're a really valuable resource to the skeptical community.
What is that book that Ben held up? Piece of shit. I mean, I can't say it about that one because I think I'm in that one, right?
Yeah, you are. In fact, Kenny actually did a couple photographs that are in here. They're shitty overexposed photographs. But yeah,
because you wanted them, fucker. I think, didn't I write like half a chapter too?
You did something. I don't know.
I did something. Shut up. Stop trying to bump me out. All right. Are we caught up?
Yeah,
one more. Okay, let's do one more and then we'll do our break and then fill up. There should be a prize for noticing Chewy's cameos. Maybe there will. All right, where's our question?
That is the question.
That's not a question.
That's a question.
There should be a prize. That's a statement. That's not.
Well, it's like a Jeopardy question.
Kind of like a question. Do we have prizes?
Holy shit, Pascal is in here. Oh, look at that.
Who are these weirdos?
Shut up.
Exactly.
We gotta get him on here. All right, so let's take our break. I'm going to play our commercial. You got 2 minutes and 22 seconds to refill your glass and get back here. So don't be late, bitch.
Well, hold on, let me get stuff out of the way.
We got to get out of the way. We got to get set up so we can do this quick break. All right, you ready? And go. Hey everyone, this is my store based on the theme of science and skepticism. It's here that you can find all kinds of shirts and hoodies, yoga pants, tote bags, the fanny packs I know you guys love, masks and pillows, all with science and skepticism as the theme. I even have hoodies for your pets. That's right, your dog or cat can wear one of these things. I also have a general store that sells more inspirational quotes or, drinking stuff because I like that kind of thing. I also have a store set up for our Three Tortured Souls podcast, which we do Saturday nights. You can find shirts and Tim Vicker's favorite drinking vessel, the mug. I also have a store tailored a little bit more towards my ghost hunting friends, Paranormal by I Am Kenny Biddle. These are shirts and quotes that are a little bit more on the ghost hunting side, especially this one, Translucent Perished Beings. Ghost. That's my favorite. So if you're interested, head on over to teespring.com/stores/scientific skepticism by IAKB and check it out. Thanks.
Are you tortured by what you see and hear about the paranormal field? Join us as we critically examine and question paranormal claims, science, ghosts, demons, cryptids, UFOs, ghost hunting technology, and much more are all on the table for discussion. Three Tortured Souls is a video podcast that streams live on Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 Pacific. Three Tortured Souls.
All right. Nice. Good. Glad to see you made it back, bitch. What do you got there? What is that?
Just sparkling water.
Oh, okay.
I don't have your hardened liver, so
That's right. You don't.
You have to work it. You have to work on it,
You
Ben.
gotta
It's
wo-
not something you can do overnight.
Right.
It takes practice.
Years.
I'm sure. Well, if we never, I mean, we and this is something a lot of people don't realize. You and I have only been in the same room like once,
and it resulted in 2 photos, one of which you really hate when I share it.
It is one of the weird. So I have a genuinely inexplicable, bizarre photograph taken with Brian Dunning, where we both have this sort of weird, like, it looks like he's like grabbing my junk, and we're like, ah! and
Well,
then
You might.
well, I would, and then there's one where like you and I are eating cookies or something. It's the weirdest damn thing, but we'll have to we'll have to make up for lost time when we finally get together.
Yeah, I think next year I think we're gonna come out because we have to do some kind of celebration for your birthday.
Yes.
No matter when it's gonna happen.
There
gonna
will
happen.
be a party at some point. We'll get it sorted out.
That's right. All right. So yeah, if people have questions, feel free to put them in there. We'll try to get to them. But we're having a good conversation. I like when we have conversations like this. And everybody kind of is interested, because usually there's a lot of questions, but if there's not a lot of questions, that means they're so interested in what we're talking about, then we save them time. I'm going to get to this question right now, though, before we move on.
Good.
I got it for
I'm
both
glad you
Ben and
got it.
Kenny. Can you suggest a good book I can follow that eases me into the proper protocol instead of tackling the whole idea of it once? Well, I don't know. This guy already plugged his book twice.
Well, at the risk of plugging my award-winning book, Investigating Ghosts, again, I've been told. I mean, I'm told it's a good. I mean, in a nutshell, I wrote a book titled Scientific Paranormal Investigation: How to Solve Unexplained Mysteries, or SPI, back, I don't know, long time back, and Kenny has a copy right there. And thank you.
Lots of tabs.
And so basically, and that's sort of a general overview of how to investigate any weird things, crop circles, psychics, ghosts, whatever else. But then after I wrote that book, I realized that really ghost hunting was such a deep topic, and there's so many different angles into it. There's automatic writing, there's in some cases possession, there's EVPs, there's so much stuff to it. And so I that's why I decided to go ahead and write the book Investigating Ghosts, was to try and bring the folkloric, historical, and investigative side to it. So
Right.
I would there's other books out there. Anomalous Psychology from Chris French is excellent. I keep waiting for Kenny to write his book. But yeah, so
if some things would happen and certain people would freaking hire me full time for this shit, I could get it done.
Fair enough.
But we'll leave that for another day. There's a lot of books. I mean, there's so many. My go-to, my top 3 books for this kind of stuff is the one that he held up. Obviously, because this came first. And then you put out the ghosts one that you're holding up. Yeah. So that, and then I do Scientific Americans and then Camera Clues for me, because
Joe's book Camera Clues is super good for photography.
Yeah, because I do deal with a lot of antique and vintage photographs, and this is just a really good book for that. And then Sharon's book is just excellent for just getting a whole kind of overview of the ghost hunting kind of community, and their ideas and how they think and all that. So really good. That's my trifecta, my holy trinity of books that I I promote. So all right, so let's jump back in. There is a photographer that was used, and his name is I'm sorry, I laugh every time I go to say this, and I feel bad because it's his real name, Dick Thompson. It just sounds like a porn name. I can't help it. But
Hold on, what was the name again?
Dick Thompson.
Oh, there you go. I thought you
Oh
said
my
Dick
God,
Johnson.
that's
I'm
gonna
like,
get me in trouble.
that's silly. But no,
So-
Dick Thompson. That's okay. I can see why you would. Okay, go ahead.
He still is a professional photographer.
What does he photograph?
He photographs. I don't know what else, but shut up, Ben. But he was the one that allegedly took the black and white photographs,
Right.
with the curves, the semicircle shapes on it, and it was featured in an issue of Popular Photography. Correct?
Yep.
Let me see. Popular Photography.
Not just featured in, allegedly authenticated by.
Authenticated. So yeah,
that was the phrase used.
When you watch the episode of Sightings that reports on this, money shots. Oh my God! Thanks, Mike. When you watch the episode of Sightings, the host he narrates what's going on, and he says it's the only photographs that were authenticated by Popular Photography. The only ghost photographs ever to appear in the magazine and authenticated by them. So we set out to find it, and Ben actually found the original article. We're trying to find I was trying to find an original issue and order it so I could get it, but that issue is just not available anywhere. But Ben was able to acquire the article, and I was able to get it. So I'm gonna share it here, so you guys can see it, because I don't like just telling you that I'm looking at it. So there, let me get this out of the way. So this is the article. It was by Adrian Vance, who I think was one of the editors of the magazine at the time. I tried to reach out to him, but was unsuccessful. Every contact that I could find, I did try, but I just never heard from them. But it goes down to about this area here. This is what it's talking about. Okay, so the illustration at the bottom of this image, which is the ARC photograph here, was made by Dick Thompson of Los Angeles. He is a professional photographer taking part in the Taft Gainer group investigations, and was present at the particularly active Culver City location. So let me see, where is it here? So it says, oh, here it is. This is the line that really stands out. At no point in this article does it say authenticate or authentic at all. I want to make that clear. But this line here, it's telling about, in the case, let's see, blah, blah, blah. Furthermore, members of the family have been judged sane by the psychiatrist working with the team. It is the objective of this group to photograph an apparition, and now it appears to them, in parentheses, to them, that they have had some success. That's as much as they comment on these photographs. They go into the rest of what like Taft and Gaynor want to accomplish here, and they actually talk about like 3D holograms and stuff. But
yeah,
like really, really reaching. But that's it. This is the only authenticating that is done in this article, and it just goes to show you that you can't take what people say all the time at face value. Like, you see it on a TV show, and it's like, oh, it's the only one that
authenticated by popular
bullshit.
Science.
It was not. It
Right.
wasn't. I mean, all they can say is, yeah, it's a photograph. And even when you get into authenticate, it's not like you can't say, yes, that's a ghost in that photograph.
Right.
You can't. You have nothing to compare to. The only thing that you can do, and this is for examples when you're dealing with like the court system and photographs that are submitted for evidence. When you authenticate a photo, the only thing you can say is, who took the photo? Yes, I took the photo. That's it. Okay, that is a photograph of, say, Kenny's house or Ben's house. This is a photograph of Ben's house. I know, I've been there before. I can authenticate that it's a real photo of his house. That's it. That's all you can do. That's authenticating. It doesn't go into, hey, this is a ghost. And
yeah,
I said so.
I had the same situation when I investigated the Sandra Mancy photograph of the Champ Lake monster, which some of you may be familiar with. Joe and I did investigations at Lake Champlain to try and determine the circumstances behind Sandy Mancy's photograph, and it's the best. It's one of the best known photographs of any lake monster anywhere, probably rivaling the surgeon's photo of Nessie. And it's basically this sort of what appears to be a head and neck coming out of the water. It's a sort of silhouetted thing, and I won't go into the whole details. But what was interesting was that when I was researching it, I kept coming across references to it being authenticated, and I'm like, so I would kind of like, what do you mean by it was authenticated? And they said, oh yeah, so they would point me to a write up somewhere, and if you actually read what they wrote, all they're saying was that it's a real photograph, and it doesn't seem to have any. It doesn't appear to be hoaxed. It could still be very well hoaxed. You couldn't see it. But again, all they meant was it's a real photograph. That is, it's not drawn in there. It's not, it doesn't appear to be some sort of, double exposure, things like that. But so, granted, sure. I mean, I nobody doubted it's a real photograph. I mean, neither I nor anyone else thought it was the image itself was hoaxed. So now some people thought that what was in the water might have been hoaxed. I don't think it was. I think it was clearly a tree stump. But anyway, my point is that often Kenny, you and I both oftentimes see the word authenticated ghost photograph or ghost monster photograph thrown around, and almost never does it mean what they're putting out to be. All it means is that it's a real photograph, and what it is still an open question.
So yeah, and all this leads into Bob's question there.
I'm pulling up.
I know. I'm segueing into it. But he asked about the negatives were recovered and would they help in the investigation. So with stuff like this, and like the photograph that Ben was just talking about, you can look at the negative, and this anomaly, I'm more than confident. I don't know if you can be more than confident. I am confident that the anomaly will be on the negative because it's a product of the photo. It's not. It's the photographic process. It's an actual object that's in front of the lens. So I have no doubt that yes, the anomaly would be on the negative, and it wouldn't make any difference. Except if it was drawn in, then yes, the negative would help. You would be able to look at the negative and say, all right, well, this was messed with. Somebody put this on a table and they scratched off a little bit of the negative, the emulsion there, and messed with it. So yes, you could do that. But in this case, I doubt it. I doubt there's any. The anomaly would be on the negative, and with the monster photo that you're talking about, right, it would still be there because they took.
And there was some question. I mean, Mancy actually gave conflicting stories about where the negative was. She said that she threw it away. And one time she said that she burned it and got rid of it. I mean, there's at least one case. There's one main case I can think of where I actually solved a part of a mystery because it happened so long ago. I mean, it wasn't that long ago. It was like 15 years ago, but where they'd actually taken a photograph using film. And I requested the negative, and using that, I could see where Walgreens had cropped it. And because I had the negative, you could actually, I just run the whole thing full size. And when you did that, you could see that what they thought was a face and a reflection was in fact a reflection from a lamp in a glass tabletop.
So it is, Bob. That's a great question, and it is important. I don't know about the negatives for these particular photos. From the entity case, I don't know where they are or who has them.
Well, I mean, and again, this is something. If this case truly is what Taff and Gaynor claim it is, then they should be sending you me the negatives and say, yes, this is amazing stuff. Look at all our evidence. Here's more photos. I'm glad you're interested in this. Dig into this, right? Instead of like, I'll answer a couple questions and then radio silence. I mean, if presumably these two photographs are being held up. These handful of photographs, they're being held up as the gold standard of evidence in this case. surely they didn't throw away the negatives, and why wouldn't they be as eager as anybody to
share them?
Yeah. I mean,
Have them tested.
it's
Have them
astonishing
looked
to me.
So there's one other thing I want to bring up, and I don't know if I addressed it in the article in Skeptical Inquirer, which I highly recommend everyone go out and find this issue, so you can read our articles and JD's article, because it's the special section of SI this week or this month. But Dick Thompson, the photographer that took this shot, I can't look at you now. The guy that took these pictures was also involved in another poltergeist case, and I can't remember the name of it, but there's a photo of a gentleman that's in the attic, and it looks like he's hanging, he's being hung. And I remember there's a video of it where he was like the last one up, and he apparently screams in the attic, and somebody shoves a camera up there and takes a picture. And I believe it was Dick Thompson that did this. And there's a picture of this guy with a wire.
I know the one you're talking about, yeah.
And he's like this against the beam, the attic
Right.
beam. And so this photographer was also involved in that case, which I think it's actually in here. I think they talk about it in Taft's book. But the other photos from that show various, and I'm hesitant to call them orbs, because when I talk about orbs, I'm usually talking about or referring to like dust particles or bugs that are reflecting light. When I look at the photos that are from this case, that are these circles of light, they are, and I'm going to try to explain this in simple terms. If you are in your living room, you shut all the drapes, all the curtains are closed, but it's a bright sunny day, and you take a little bit of the curtain and just make a little circle, or there's like an edge where a sunbeam is coming out the edge of the curtain and it's shining on the wall. So it's not lighting up the whole room, but you're getting that little beam of light on the wall. That's what these photos were. It was like he looked around and said, oh, well, there's a sunbeam on the wall. I'm going to take a picture of that. Doesn't use a flash. And he takes a picture, and it looks just like light on a wall, not in 3D space.
Right.
So from my perspective, my opinion, I don't trust the photographer whatsoever. I think he knew what he was photographing, and that's all I can really say, because I don't have enough information. That's all I can say. I think he knew what he was photographing, and maybe like the rest, this was like he saw this opportunity. This was his big break. But
yeah, and I mean, I think that's one part of the angle that's one part of the story I sort of want to touch on, is that when you're dealing with people who are vulnerable, people who genuinely feel that they're experiencing a curse or possession or a ghost or evil thing in their house, and Kenny and I and others, when we've dealt with these people, and in many cases they're frightened, and other people can sort of laugh or joke, whatever else, but this is serious to them.
Right.
And that's actually one of the tragedies in this case, is that Doris Bither was clearly a fragile, vulnerable woman who had myriad problems, financial problems, substance abuse problems, destitute, just in bad shape. And the last thing she needed was these ghost hunters to come in, and these parapsychologists to come in and sort of say, oh, well, we'll investigate this. We'll solve this whole thing. I think originally, and again, I'm just going by, obviously I wasn't there. I can only go by my experience and reading Taft's write-ups and a couple other sort of tangential things. But, I think that if I were in their shoes, I would have tried more to encourage her to get some counseling and to sort of look at other possible explanations for what was going on, rather than saying, oh my God, yes, there's something, yes, you're being assaulted by a ghost, and sort of buying into it. That doesn't mean that you should be dismissive, But I guess I was just sort of surprised and kind of frankly appalled, as somebody who has a background in psychology, that wasn't sort of more robustly explored.
So I was correct. I went through the pictures. So this is the picture that I was talking about,
Right.
with the guy being hung. And then I want to show you, well, that's one example of lights, but that's just light shining on a wall. And then the other picture is that. So this is the carpet, and that's the bottom of the wall, and just the lights shining on it. And I seriously think this is just sunlight or a focused beam of light on that. But there's, I mean, and this is a bad picture. Reprint it in a book. So, but all right. Question. At the time, correct me if I'm wrong, but this was one of the heights of ghost demon stories, including The Omen, right? If so, even if not so, I completely agree, Kenny. Photography did not capitalize on what was popular at the time. So this was in 1974 that it was taking place, right? And then I believe the film, let's see, the book
I think it was 82. Yeah, there was the pattern, right? So you have something, and again, you see the same pattern in The Exorcist with the Amityville case and so on, where there is a real case. Now, define real however you want, but something happens, and then oftentimes the Warrens jump in, although not in this particular case. And then,
I'm surprised.
yeah, how did the Warrens miss this one?
I think because it was too far away.
But yeah, I mean, you know, Pasquale, I'm looking at the chat, you know, he's early satanic panic. I mean, that's, you know, that this is all part of the thing. And so when you know, it's important to recognize, and I'm not saying anything you don't know, Kenny, but it's important to these things don't occur in a vacuum. These events occur in certain specific cultural and social contexts, and especially when you have the early tendrils of the Satanic Panic. You have The Exorcist. You have the 1971 book by William Peter Blatty, and then the blockbuster film by Friedkin, and then the Incarnation, this and that. I mean, all these are floating around in the time. And again, keep in mind, this was in 74. So literally at the time when Taff and Gaynor and these other 30, 50, hundreds, whoever the hell knows how many people there were there, the film The Exorcist it may even still been playing in some places. It played forever. And I mean, it was it was very much in the culture. This wasn't like, oh, remember that movie from decades ago? People are talking about this. People are talking about possession and all sorts of things. And so, you know, when people tell stories of what they experienced, ghost stories and other things like that, urban legend stories, they draw on what's in the pop culture. They draw on their interpretations of what's going on here. And so that you know, that's why it's important to keep in mind again the context of these things, because it really does inform how these things develop.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, the Exorcist, the book came out in 71. The film was released in 73, so a year before the events that we're talking about. And it's already ingrained in pop culture. People knew about it. And I mean, it was, like you said, the Exorcist was a phenomenon. I mean, it was huge. It caused controversy, it caused uproar. Religious organizations, I remember, like, going crazy because, you know, this depicted the demonic possession and an exorcist, which you don't see, and the pea soup, which is my favorite part. But it was already ingrained in the culture, and this is pre-internet. This is before you had the world in your pocket, where you could just Google anything. You don't even have to tap. You can just talk to your phone now, and it tells you everything you need to know. So this is way before you could look stuff up, and it was there. So it was prime. And then, yeah, like after the case was there, and then when they decided, hey, let's write a book again, the book came out. The Entity book was released in 78. So a year before the Amityville horror was released. So that book was already out and in the public awareness. So yeah, you had these two huge stories that influenced how we looked at things. You had the Warrens; they were part of this stuff. So you had them spreading their bullshit because I fucking hate the Warrens. I just but you had this going on, and then the entity comes along, and it's not. I definitely see how like Taft, Gaynor, really it never went away. It just lost a little strength in the mid-90s, but I think it seeds the new Satanic Panic. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, it's still with us.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think when Taft and Gaynor, and then even Mr. Thompson, I'm not going to say his first name.
What was his name?
Saw this opportunity. I think they saw this opportunity like, oh, this is our golden ticket.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do this. And they did it. Unfortunately, they did it in a very, very bad way. They were too excited. And I think I'm not sure how I want to say it. I think when they put the book out, and again, I didn't read the book, but when it eventually got to the movie, and this is where I'm going with this, the movie focused on the definite 1980s vibe of nudity.
And yeah, scary and
scary. Yeah. They tried to combine the scariness with, hey, let's put a naked woman on the screen. Because honestly, that when the entity comes up, and we touched on this briefly in the beginning of the show, when the entity comes up, people usually remember like, oh, maybe I think I remember that. And sadly, the most common response is, oh, is that with the boobs, the invisible hands? And
yeah,
that's what you remember.
Because it's just such a, I mean, it's, and I saw I rewatched the film in preparation for writing this article. I'd seen it, I think, once before. It was okay. Honestly, I wasn't like blown away. I was like, all right, it was all right. But it was the special effects. And for those who don't know, I mean, you see, it's like Barbara. I mean, it's prosthetic, but you see this sort of weird, like invisible groping impressions on a breast, and it's so strange. It's strange. It's not horrifying. It's just weird and like creepy, and so you can see why. I mean, and I haven't really come down on whether the film is exploitative. I mean, it kind of is, but but if that's the script you're going to write, right? Let's face it, right? If the screenwriters, I think it was Frank DeFelitta had done the book, and then I think he was one of the screenwriters. If he had left out the sexual assault part of it, I mean, you could certainly done that, but it wouldn't really be a memorable film. There's dozens and dozens of films about people scared, terrorized by ghosts that throw them around. So in a way, that was one of the things that sort of made it lurid and sensational,
right?
And sort of makes it memorable. And so, and anyway, interesting. Just to take off on that for a second. So I mean, Taft himself, if you read the end of his book, and I know you have other people, he's not really happy with the book. With the film, excuse me.
The film, yeah.
I mean, and again, I didn't go into the parallels of how did the book compare to the film, because that wasn't what I was. That's a different topic. I was interested in the second layer beneath it. But obviously, at each iteration, you have screenwriters and you have people making it more and more dramatic and sensational. So you have a kernel of something that may or may not have happened. Probably didn't in this case, but may or may not have happened. And then it gets written about and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until you see on the screen these dramatic, sensational, scary, earth-shaking, thudding, terrifying, screaming things. Right. Whereas in real life, oftentimes the description is much more mundane. So just to finish up with this. So Taft, he criticized, I mean, and frankly, the ending of the film is ridiculous. I mean, it is so, it is ridiculous. So like, It's so stupid.
So if you haven't watched the film, you really should, because it's a cult favorite now. It really has hit cult status because you really have to be a horror kind of like fan to know about this film. And the ending is just you
It
sit
is
there
off
like,
the
what?
rails.
What are you doing? What's your
Yeah.
plan?
Even by like the real life standards of bad investigation, this is like orders of magnitude
Yes.
more ridiculous.
Horrible.
Which is not easy to do.
But I think between the focus, well, the ending just sucked. The ending, I'm just gonna say that the ending sucked. But I think the focus on the demonic rape, because that was really what they pushed. That was really what the film pushed. Because you see the trailers, and it's about that. The trailer really highlights that, and the film, when you get those scenes that come up, it's that dramatic, that very, and Pascal will probably have a better description about the music, but the music that goes along with it, it's up. It, I don't know how to describe it. It gets intense and dramatic, and that's where it builds a suspense, and it happens several times in the film. So I'm kind of thinking that's why the film didn't fail, but wasn't a blockbuster like The Exorcist or the Amityville Horror.
Yeah, I mean, it's again the entity is it's a strange bird because it's sort of, like I said, sort of flew under the radar, but it has a cult following. It's not actually talked about that often. I was actually surprised when I started researching it because I have a bookshelf in my living room, 4 stacks full of ghost books, and there was surprisingly few references. See, there you go. There were surprisingly few references to the entity story.
Right.
And I was genuinely surprised. I thought that would be more, but it's just, I mean, you can find it, but there's just not much there. And part of it is because a lot of people just hadn't bothered to do the research that we were digging into this case. And I mean, I'm not to pat ourselves on the back here, but to the best of my knowledge, we have done in Skeptical Inquirer magazine, as far as I know, the most comprehensive skeptical critique of this film ever. I mean, I don't know anybody who's done any more. We would have found it.
Right.
And
go ahead.
Yeah, and so I mean, so that was sort of odd to me, but I mean, going back for a second to, I would argue that there's nothing inherently wrong with creating a fictional film or book or anything else about ghosts and sex, because that is, I mean, it can be exploitative like anything else, but it isn't necessarily. I mean, there's a whole, I talk about the summit in my article. I mean, there's a legitimate whole history of people experiencing ghostly sex. And I give examples in the book. I mean, you can go to the incubi, the succubi, people, the singer Kesha claimed that one of her songs was inspired by getting laid by a ghost. Natasha Blasik, who was an actress in a couple paranormal films, she described this as well. And there's other examples. So, and there's a book by David Hufford titled "The Terror That Comes in the Night." And he's a folklorist, and I met him on a TV shoot one time. Anyway, he did a really interesting book, "The Terror That Comes in the Night," looking at what's called old hag syndrome. And he was doing research in Newfoundland, among other places, and he was looking at what people report happening during hypnopompic and hypnagogic experiences, going into and out of sleep. And as we know, this often serves as the basis for some alien abductions, ghost sightings, and this and that. But he reported that about 15% of the population claims to have been visited at night in bed, either while sleeping or when they're going to sleep, and things like that. So the experience of being touched or groped sexually, whether it's consensual, I mean, that you sort of get into weird. I mean, how I don't know how you parse that out, but it depends on how you frame it, right? So if you're having a sexy dream where some invisible person is touching you, then that's good times. Hey, that's
okay.
you don't complain about that. That's
good agreement,
cool. Yeah. Clean the sheets, right? I mean, that's
We've all been there.
yeah. So I mean, but again, that's not abnormal. That's not pathological. It's normal to have these things, right? If you frame it in the context of a scary haunting or a poltergeist activity, it's all in how you frame it. So if you have these ambiguous experiences, even if they're perfectly natural and psychologically explainable, then you're going to see them in different ways. And so anyway, so again, the idea is that there's lots of different ways that we can I guess what I'm trying to say is that I don't see anything inherently necessarily icky or creepy or bad about making a film about ghostly sex, because many people reported it, men and women. Right. And in this particular case, Bither, I mean, they didn't sensationalize her claims. That's literally what she said. I mean, they did not. The screenwriters did not add that for sensational value. That's one thing she claimed. Now, most likely that's not what happened. I mean, there was an article in the journal called Mental Health, Religion, and Culture, which suggested that she was actually suffering from what's called haunted people syndrome. And this is basically where people will frame unusual or anomalous experiences and believe that external agents, ghosts, spirits, whatever, are touching you or doing things with you. And again, if you're in that framework and you frame why, that's what you're going to see. And I looked into this in the Popobawa case, the skeptic raping demon of Zanzibar in East Africa. I wrote about that for 40 Times Magazine, did a big investigation years back. And once again, you had this entity that was invisible, allegedly a shapeshifter that would attack people, often men, at night and occasionally sexually assault them. And in some people's reporting of it, it was a ghost or a genie or things like that. So again, this is not unheard of in folklore. This is not unheard of in psychology. But it's unusual to see it framed in a mainstream horror film starring Barbara Hershey when it's not there. I'll just add one other quick thing here, which is that Taft himself doesn't believe that Doris Bither was sexually assaulted. And this is one thing that I tripped over. Was like, hold on here. So again, if you read his book and you got it right in front of you, he himself admits that Bither's claims couldn't be substantiated because, again, she said after the fact, weeks after the fact, that it had happened and there was no evidence of it, and there was never any. I mean, there's no evidence of it whatsoever. So even the main investigator doesn't think that she was assaulted. Now, he does believe it was some sort of poltergeist activity. So he has this weird sort of pseudo-skeptical approach to it, where he's like, well, the main thing that the film is known for probably didn't happen, but she probably was, haunted by poltergeists and weird energies, and of course we have the photographs to prove it. And so there's this whole sort of interesting dynamic to it. So, and I'll just add that in the original screenplay, and I found this a little footnote in a book. The original screenplay for The Entity had a subplot in which it was suggested that Bither's experiences with the spectral sexual assault were basically incestuous fantasies about her boys, who were I think one was like 11, 13 at the time.
Yeah, I think it was 10. Yeah,
10. Yeah,
10 to 14 or 15. Yeah,
yeah. And so I don't want to go too deep into it, but basically the belief was and Taft himself noted this, is that so in her description of the ghost rape, the assault, she claimed that 3 invisible male entities. Now, again, it's not how you, if it's an invisible force, how do you, but apparently it was male feeling of presence, and she had 3 male entities in the house in the form of her children. So anyway, originally in the screenplay by De Felita, there was a subplot that suggested this might be an explanation for her experiences, that it could have been sort of unconscious, latent sexual desire, or again, she had a lot going on, drug use, all sorts of things, and this could have been an explanation. That subplot was, as you know, cut from the final film.
Yeah.
So that does not appear in the final film, but it's interesting that even early on, people who were following the case, including Taff and Frank De Felita, who wrote the book, suspected that might have been the case.
Right. So I guess we're coming down to the end here. We're getting near the end of the show. In summary, I want to say that I don't think there was any hoaxing going on, like not that's evident. I think it was 2 very overexcited ghost hunters that were acting like ghost hunters. So even though they were part of a university, I think they were acting more like ghost hunters when they went into this, and they approached it as such. And their excitement got the better of them and overruled any like, we need to control the situation, the environment, we need to really lock it down. And maybe their quest for fame, I don't know if I want to say that, because, well, I mean, it kind of looks like that, because there's still, well, at least Taft still talks about it 50 years later.
Well, yeah, to be fair to him, that's his calling card. I mean, that's literally, I mean, I think he has a degree in psychophysiology or something. I mean, it's nothing to do with any of this. And frankly, if I were him, I'd be doing the same thing. I mean, if there was a famous case that I investigated in '74, I'm not knocking him. I mean, he's
Right.
other cases. He's got a book and this and that. But I mean, it's his. That's what he's best known for. And so it doesn't surprise me that to this day he does interviews on it and coast to coast and this and that. So I mean, you know, I can't blame him for doing that. I mean, to be fair, he was there. He did a half-assed investigation. You know, I mean, he was legitimately part of the case. Unlike, for example, the Warrens, who in some cases, there's one of the cases where I think it was the Enfield poltergeist case. The Warrens showed up one day, tried to insert themselves into the case, and got kicked out.
Right.
Right. And still to this day they try to say, oh well, of course they're now dead, but the Conjuring films try to make it as if they were involved in investigation, and they weren't at all. So,
incidentally, I want to answer Mr. Kruger's question earlier that no, the Warrens were not involved in the entity case whatsoever, like not one bit.
But you can bet they would have been if
if it would have been on the East Coast. Yeah, they would have been involved. But I'm pretty sure distance made that not.
Well, you know, Kenny, you're not taking consideration how much time and effort it takes for the Warrens to count their money. When you have the stacks of money rolling in, the royalty checks, this takes time, dude. I know you don't know that. I don't know that.
I don't know that. We don't know that because we don't make all that money. There's no bank here. There's no
fucking bank here.
Oh, I heard that.
Wow. The voice of Donna comes through. Like, yep, there's no fucking bank here. Damn.
As long as it wasn't Dick Thomas.
Oh shit. All right. We got time for some questions. If there's questions. There was one.
I saw a couple questions.
Yeah.
They didn't form it in the form.
Bob
But you answered it, he said.
We did? Oh, okay.
All right then.
Well, maybe this one.
This
but
one.
I think you answered this one too.
Could there possibly be on being sexually assaulted by a ghost, scratch marks? So yeah, I don't. I mean, I'll jump in. I'll jump in first. There's. Yes, I don't think you can determine if it was a. I'm sorry, I shouldn't be laughing. If it was a ghost that did such things, but because it happened weeks, like when you see the film, and that's the most popular version of this story that people are going to get. When you see
Right.
the film, you think it's taking place during the investigation process. It was not.
It was not.
It was not. It happened weeks prior to the investigation starting. So by that time, according to Doris Bither, the bruises and marks or whatever that she experienced were healed. She never went to seek medical attention from the attacks. So there was no evidence. There was nothing. Like, I think the film actually depicts her going to see a doctor and showing like the bruises and stuff. But I don't think that actually happened for the real case.
No, it didn't. And I mean, it's a fair question. I mean, how would you even prove this, right? So the answer is you wouldn't be able to prove it. You could show marks, but again, that's not going to show anything. But the counter to that is that if she had recorded this, right? If she said, "Oh my God, I'm being attacked," and I mean, she could have set up cameras. They had cameras in 1974. I'm not faulting her for not doing this. I'm just saying that there are ways to record whether or not crazy shit's happening in your house. I mean, you can do that. Now she wouldn't have had the means to do that because again, she was destitute. She was living in an abandoned, in a condemned place. She had other things going on. So I'm not faulting her for doing that. So the answer to the question is, in theory, yes. In theory, there are ways to determine not necessarily that somebody was spectrally assaulted, but that something weird happened. I mean, if there's cameras around there and something flies across the window, and some of the things that were depicted in the film allegedly happened. People flying across the rooms. I mean, the Bither and her sons claim these things happened. And as I recall in Taft's book, he says he personally witnessed a couple of things, not quite that dramatic, but they were going on. Now, what did he see? I don't know. I wasn't there. You weren't there. We weren't there. He didn't have cameras on. So all we can go by is sort of second and third hand stories of what people say happened.
So, all right, I'm not sure about this question from John. Hang on, if that's how we can. I'm not sure what I said that provoked this question, but I'm saying you can get a medical examination, and they can do a test to show that someone was sexually assaulted, or if she had bruises, because she did claim she had bruises. They could have been, and it's
well,
very
no,
hard.
I can answer this. Kenny, you're bombing on this. Also, it's funny.
Thank you.
Okay, look,
appreciate it. No,
I'm being totally serious here. So think about this, right? Let's say that the claim was, again, it depends entirely on what's being claimed, as is often the case. If the claim was that a giant hand, like literally a 18, 24-inch hand, grabbed your arm and shook you and threw you across the room, that will leave a mark. And you could see a human-sized mark. And if a person, including Bither or anybody else, genuinely had giant claw marks or a hand imprint that could clearly be determined as a hand imprint, but is somehow 3 times the size of a normal one, that would, is it conclusive evidence? No, but that would be the sort of thing that that could potentially help prove a case. But again, it depends entirely on what's being claimed. If all she's claiming is that 4 male entities probed her and pushed her, and then there's no way to prove that. And that's nobody's fault. It's not Bither's fault. It's not Taft's fault. But then if the basis for that is so flimsy, then why is it that, as Kenny noted, this is one of the main things that people remember from the film?
Right. Thank you for the save. Appreciate it. Because it's very difficult to talk on topics like that. I'm not qualified to talk on sexual assault. I start thinking more analytically. I'm starting to think like my brain goes to, she claimed she had bruises, and if someone went to the doctor and said, "Hey, this happened to me," they would of course document it, and
Right.
there would be something solid to look at. Doesn't prove that it's a spectral assault. It shows
right.
that something happened. She was assaulted by something.
Well, and let's just take this a step further, right? Let's say that she had gone to the doctor and she did actually have evidence of an assault, right? Then the question is, what happened? Who assaulted you, right? And presumably she would know, right? If she were assaulted by a guy on the street or a date or some actual physical person whose she could give a description to police, that'd be one thing. But if the answer to the question is, how did you get this assault? If the answer to that question is, it was something invisible that pushed into me at night, what are the police supposed to do with that? That doesn't prove it didn't happen. It just, at some point, it becomes unfalsifiable.
Right. Okay. All right. One more question, and then we will wrap this up.
Here you go.
So Bob says, how are these guys not called out on ethics violation by the university? You said they were working with UCLA, right? Real sexual assault happen every day, and glorifying it in this way should have gotten them fired, my opinion. So I don't think necessarily that the two gentlemen, Taft and Gaynor, they did not exploit this. They did not glorify the sexual assault. They reported on it. It was the writer, the book writer, not the book writer necessarily. It was the screenwriter.
I think that's leader. Yeah. I mean, you can't really fault you can't fault Taft and Gaynor for what's seen in the film. They had nothing to do with the film,
right? And they actually talk. You mentioned it in the end of the chapter in the book. Yeah. Taft goes into how much he doesn't like the film and how much he was really pissed off about what they did with the story.
I bet he cashed the checks though, didn't he?
Yes, he did. Good point. I mean, yeah, there's that fine line. All right, Ben, we are at the 2-hour mark, just about. So if people kind of liked you and they want to see more of your shit, like, where do they find you?
Well, thanks for asking. So I have a podcast, which you may have heard of. You've been on the show several times. It's called Squaring the Strange.
What?
Comes out every 2 months or 2 months. Jesus, every 2 weeks or so.
Wow. How's that drink doing?
Yeah, you know what? Whatever. So yeah, it's Squaring the Strange.
Water.
We've been on for going on 5 years. I'm actually kind of proud of it. One of my co-hosts, Pasquale, is somewhere in the chat here, and there's Celestia Ward, who again did a awesome job. She's a caricaturist and artist. So check out Squaring the Strange. I have a column in SI, and check out my book Investigating Ghosts if you want to check out 318 pages of my best effort to bring science to ghost investigations. I'm on Twitter, and every now and then I don't do Instagram because I can't figure it out. But this is fun. I've enjoyed the chat.
I feel your pain there.
Yeah, I don't do Instagram either because I started doing it and I was like, no, this is just too much work.
Yeah.
No, I do Facebook. I do Twitter once in a while. I do TikTok just because it's fun and it's short, but otherwise, yeah. And I have heard your podcast once or twice, and it was actually funny because I was listening to let's see, I think not the last episode, but the episode before that I was on, and the episode before that one, Celeste is like, "Oh, next week we're gonna have Kenny Bither on." I'm like, "I'm gonna be on." wait, am I scheduled to be on? When did I do that? Oh, it's been so long. We recorded it a while ago, but yeah, it's always fun hanging out. And unfortunately, like Pascal, he was in the chat room and he mentioned like we've never been in the room. I think on two, at least one. Well, you guys did a movie preview of a very awful, horrendous, freaking foreign movie.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
That was so bad. I was sober in the beginning, and then I got drunk just because I couldn't figure out what the movie was about. And then I still couldn't figure out what it was about, but I watched it. And then you guys did a like a special live thing where it was like show and tell kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that was the only time Pascal and me have been in the same kind of chat room together. So I've never been on the show with Pascal. So we need to rectify that.
All right, we'll work on it.
Yes. So otherwise, everyone, you can hang out for the announcements, which are pretty quick. I'm not even going to put Bob's announcements. I usually have a frame that I put up, but I didn't update it. So I'm just going to talk about the things that I have coming up. Tomorrow night, you have anything coming up?
I got lots of stuff coming up if you want to talk about it.
Donna has a show tomorrow. She can plug it real quick.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I have a show up at Charles Bowen Middle School in Yardley, PA.
Yeah.
Yes. It's up by Bob.
Up by Bob. Bob
I'll
in the
be
chat
there
room.
from 9 to 3.
Bob, you better come out and visit and buy something from her. Make her feel good.
That's not necessary. And then on Sunday, I'll be at the Humeville Firehouse.
Oh, there you go. In Ben Salem.
Yeah.
Or Humeville. But Ben Salem, yeah. Doing the craft show.
There from I think it's another 10 to 3, 10 to 2 at least. So
all
10
right.
to 2, 10 to 3.
Tomorrow, I have 2 podcasts. One, I have at 3 p.m. I'll be on a podcast called Shadow Whispers in the Night. And it's a podcast from the UK. It's 2 lovely ladies, Jenny and Kelly, that I'll be talking with. They were both on the show a couple of weeks ago, and we had a great time because they're funny as hell. Half the time I can't understand their accent, and half the other time we're all drunk. So great time. And then tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern time is the 3 Tortured Souls podcast that I do with Tim Vickers and Dave Schumacher. And we're going to be talking about breaking down the origins and stories behind the 3 most popular haunted dolls. That's going to be fun. Holy crap. And then coming up next year, I don't have anything for the rest of the year. I'm actually stopping. I'm not accepting any more projects because I have way too many on my plate right now.
Yes, way too many.
Way too many. But next year, March 25th to 27th is the Rochester Winter Parafest, hosted by my friend Ted Vanson. I'll be up there in New York, Rochester, New York for that. At some point, J.D. Sword, fellow author, is going to, me and him are going to be doing the One Chip Challenge. We're going to try and raise some money for the Cancer Research Institute by eating this demonically possessed chip, which is the only thing I think is demonically possessed. Horrible thing. You should do it, Ben, with us.
I was actually I can't find those here. If you want to send me one, I may consider it.
Oh, you gotta
I will
do it
find
now.
one now because I have 2. I have to send one to JD. But if I find another one, I will send it to you. And
all right,
we'll get you back on the show.
Oh, that would be great. 2, 3 is doing it. That'd be
and
awesome.
then except for that, come check out my work on skepticalinquirer.org. I do a column called A Closer Look, and I also do a video series now called Ghosts in the Machine, which I'm going to be working on my 3rd video this weekend. Try to get it out, but everything else good. Guys, great show. Awesome talking to you, Ben. I love talking to you. This was great, really informative, and it's nice, especially when you can bail me out of a question that I'm bombing on.
No, this is totally fun. This is thanks for inviting me on. This is cool. Great audience, and good questions. And everyone else, have a great weekend. Be safe, and remember, never, ever stop learning. And I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.